seagulls follow trawler. It's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you very much.
Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Don't back down, double down. Don't back down, double down.
Yes, here we go. The Boyce'S bus. I'm on the right tonight, and I don't know why. It's just.
I was going to say, look at you disappeared for a second there.
I've no idea what's happening, mate. I'm using a new webcam, a new microphone. Hopefully, I'm sounding good. And somehow I'm on the right tonight, Jonathan. But fuck it, we'll deal with it. I'm wearing sunglasses. I think I caught a bit of the sun walking home. I've got big white panda.
Look as if you've been to Florida and back, mate.
Santa Ponza face. So I'm just going to stick with the sunglasses again today. Who gives a fuck? So it's the only way to get through the show, mate. Because let me tell you, the white panda eyes, Jonathan, is not a good look. How is everyone doing on the bus, though? More importantly, Monday Club revving back in. Yes, we love it. And Jonathan, we have been gifted a news story. Now, I know a lot of people will be up in arms about it. I fully understand that. We're going to look at all the angles and how this stories came about, Jonathan. Where the sources came from, who's leaked it, who's telling Fabrizio Romano all this ITK or ITL in the Boyce'S case information. And we're going to obviously look at whether it's a feasible thing for Celtic to do, whether there'll be a revolt, how it then impacts the manager and his relationship with the board, whether it matters. I think we need to have a look at all these angles, Jonathan, because the same agent as now, Jonathan, right before we go live on air, decided to flip it. He's now, Jonathan, and when I say flip it, not necessarily that story, but he has flipped the Celtic fans from hating him to loving him, because he's also just announced in the last few minutes, Jonathan, that Jota and Celtic is on. Fabrizio Romano has Celtic on the mind tonight, Jonathan. We are going to be discussing Fabrizio, his tweets, and we're going to obviously have to look at, Jonathan, the impacts if there was a departure of Josip Juranovic. Very first and foremost, though, before we get sorted down, we're going to have to look at the passengers. Hit subscribe, hit the like button, hit the share button, And if you want to be a member, that's absolutely fine. I'm getting the piss out to me for the sunglasses, Jonathan. I don't care.
Oh,
I
Scott
would
Carter join the dots on that 10% lager. That's what I first said as well.
No. Trust me, I didn't even finish that. It was disgusting.
Definitely the sun, mate. Definitely the sun. He's just got peely wally skin, even worse than mine.
It is worse than yours. And I don't know what lighting you're using, Jonathan. You like you've been in Malta for a week. Do you know what I mean? I don't know where that comes from. I was going to ask. Oh, fucking bullshit. Hey, anyway, I was going to say as well. What was I going to say? You've just see you. I had something important to say there. Oh, you're so annoying. Right. Anyway, let's just crack into it then. Let's just crack into it since Jonathan's telling us all about his very toned skin. Paul McFarlane's already in there and saying Romano can get the F out. That's what I was going to. So how are you in this chat, by the way, Jonathan? How are you even on the screen? Because I haven't even sent you a link. Is this you using admin rules now?
That's me using admin rules. After the success of the quiz on Saturday night, I've decided to hijack the admin login so I can see everything that's going on.
Well,
keep a close eye on everyone.
I think I said it yesterday, but I'm gonna double down on it, Jonathan. I thought you did a wonderful job. I really thought you were brilliant on Saturday, so well done. And Endless Celts, legendary. I was saying that yesterday as well. And then also Stubbsy Sauce, Jonathan's taking hairstyle tips from Cameron Diaz. Jonathan, you might want to turn off the comments, mate. It might be a negative experience for you. Now having them all up. Now, David Logue, the main man, he cut my hair today, Jonathan. As you can see, it went a wee bit shorter than normal.
It's never looked better, may I say.
Oh, thank you, mate. He did a good job. He did a very good job. David's salon is in Leslie, Jonathan. So that was 3 buses for me today, which is funny because I like a bus. But I thought his shop is just amazing. It was brilliant, and it was good hospitality, Jonathan. Okay, fine. I got a couple of IPAs in there as well. So it was a good afternoon, mate, all round. A lot of travelling, but it was great to meet someone on the bus that you only kind of know online. And there should be, Jonathan, confirmation in the next day or so of a hell of a lot more meeting up. Make of that what you will, ladies and gentlemen. But
teaser tonight.
It might not just be the likes of me and David Logue meeting up. It could be me and Stevie Kenny, for example, meeting up. Lanky67 could be shaking hands. I could be shaking hands with at some point. David Ferguson, though, now gets the show off to a great start as well. Jonathan, guess what?
What's that?
He's became a new member! Yes! Nice one. No, I appreciate it, David, mate. I was enjoying the chat on Twitter. So we are going to go straight down that avenue now, Jonathan. Thank you very much, David. Sincerely, it does help us improve the product. I'm using a new webcam, so the background should look a lot blacker than it did before. And look, this new mic weighs a ton. And hopefully my dulcet tones sound, I don't know, just as annoying as always. I have had a laugh at some of the negative comments I've seen recently. You know, you must think a lot of yourself. Not that he's quoted me in the tweet, this wee plant pot, whoever he is, but he's like, you have to think a lot of yourself to have your own name on your podcast. I'm like, on your own podcast, your own name. I don't know what sort of crisis of confidence this guy's got, but to me, that's not that big a deal. Anyway, he then goes on.
Maniac.
Like, what, my name on my own podcast? Wow. And he goes, and to have on your own t-shirts as well. Someone replies, who is this that you're talking about? He replies, Boyce, if that's what even his name is. Oh, no, Boyce or whatever he's called. I'm like, mate, you've been tweeting about my name being on a t-shirt. Don't get on, you don't know my name, you little prick, you know what I mean? Whoever he is. I think he's called Massimo, hiding behind an anonymous Twitter account, Jonathan, which we know the guy he was defending, the wee fella, actually describes them as non-entities. So the irony is not lost on me. I heard, Jonathan, you were have you been the receiving end of being blocked on Twitter recently?
I guess, I believe I have. A certain person seems to have removed me from his followers unfortunately, and I've
Really
barely
sad.
slept since, to be honest with you. It's been very difficult trying to find words to put into context just how devastated I am by this turn of events. But I'm plodding on at the moment. But it's good to know you're only ever a phone call away if I need you to talk through things like this.
Don't you worry, mate. I'm sure you're going to be okay. Scott Cameron says he's loving the new mic. I would be interested to know if I sound any better or not. You see, if not, it's going back. Jonathan, we need to talk about Josip Juranovic. I think he has brought on Tony Ralston inadvertently, maybe in a way, just by sheer quality of competition. He's brought our Tony Ralston on into having, the best season he's ever had at Celtic, and elevated his status into Tony Ralston now being a international for Scotland, a goal-scoring international now as well. These are all positive signs. I think Josip Juranovic has a huge following in the support. I think he's a player who's got he must have won every popularity contest going. I've not always subscribed to some of the gushing about him, if I'm honest. Okay? I can't deny that. But the story tonight that Fabrizio Romano is leading with Jonathan has got a lot of fans in a wee bit of a panic, to say the least. Okay, I think we need to be honest on that.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of panic that rather than it being incomings, it is an outgoing that seems to be the sort of biggest potential anyway at this moment in time. Transfer activity Celtic have. Now, we need to be honest about these things, Jonathan. I've watched the Regan and Mark Kearney show. We've discussed it, mate. Right? Celtic tend to sell a player every summer. This isn't something that's necessarily completely new or reinventing the wheel of the Celtic board. Yes, okay, Champions League monies came in. I think anyone that's sort of fallen for the narrative that this would be, oh, well, all's plain and sailing, we'll spend the meat and bones of the £40 million, we won't sell anyone, hasn't really been paying attention for the last 10 to 15, 20 years, even maybe you could go back as far as. Jonathan, Celtic notoriously balance their books, even when they're imbalanced in their favour at times. And I expect fully that if an offer of £15 million, and we're going to get your take, by the way, on the valuation that you place on Juranovic if he were to be sold. But what I will say is, Jonathan, my hunch is Fabrizio Romano doesn't tweet this without any sort of inside knowledge. My gut tells me he gets a lot of his information from agents as opposed to clubs. That would suggest to me that Juranovic's agent is perhaps thinking payday time. Juranovic's stock is high. He's photoed with Luka Modric recently, obviously, because that's the circles he surrounds himself in when he's playing international football. He's a league title winner at Celtic. He made the adaptation, no problem at all. He's a likeable personality. He's got 10, 12 caps for Croatia. He's 27. He's coming into the peak of his powers. I think his agent may be looking at his client and thinking, you could make me a big signing on fee, mate, in the near future. Why not tell Fabrizio there's loads of interest? Secondly, while Celtic may not have fielded any interest on Josip, that doesn't mean Josip's agent wouldn't have. Because that's not always how it works now, Jonathan, that, clubs go direct to other club to buy a player. They might sense what the level of interest may be from said player first. So I think we may combine all this. For me, Fabrizio Romano is not one of those people who kids on to be ITK. I've never seen a message that Moussa Dembele definitely won't be going to Turkey, for example. So I think it's safe to say that when Fabrizio tweets, he is pretty confident in what he's saying. Does he get it all right? Absolutely not. Of course he doesn't. I think we need to take this, though, rumour, Jonathan, as a bit of substance. I want your immediate reaction to it, please, if you will.
Yeah, well, I think, normally with sort of rumours like this, if it's coming from the sources like the usual rags, like the Daily Record or the Sun, they're easier to dismiss and just say they're just talking nonsense, as Roy Keane would say, nonsense. But when you're looking at it from a guy like Fabrizio Romano, who tends to get more right than wrong, to be fair to him, and certainly when it comes to big transfer news, he's usually quite on the ball and has his fingers on the pulse, which makes me think there is certainly going to be substance to this story. It's a little bit caught me by surprise, if I'm completely honest. It wasn't what I was really expecting for Juranovic to possibly be gathering interest quite so quickly at Celtic to go right down to the Premiership after only one season at the club, where I think it's been a bit, nip and tuck between him and Ralston as to who could have had that right back. And there's been many debates on the bus over, which one of the two is actually the better player for that position. So, when you're looking at it from that point of view, I don't think anyone in the Premiership would be looking at a Tony Ralston by any stretch of the imagination right now. So I thought it probably would have been a little bit further down the line before, Juranovic was perhaps gathering interest from the English Premiership. However, now that that's breaking with the story tonight, you have to say it's something that is gathering substance. I expect there will be a bid for him. And I know you're obviously going to be coming on to talk about valuation prices,
yes.
but need to stand very firm on that, because they don't, whilst I take your point that they generally do sell someone every window, this window is slightly different in the fact Celtic already know exactly where they're going to be at the end of the window, i.e. in the Champions League. They know they've got that money coming in. They're already sitting with healthy reserves in the bank at the moment. Obviously, granted, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes in terms of incoming transfers that are being identified and how much is going to be outlaid there. But if you're looking at it from the point of view of previous summers to this one, Celtic have to be standing extremely firm on this. I don't think they should be accepting any sort of cheap rate deal or knockback deal. And, I would literally hold it out for at least 20 million on this. I really would, because I think Juranovic is tied up until 2026, I think, roughly. So he's got plenty of years left on his contract. He's a Croatian international. Played one of his games of his career, I believe, against France last week. So, I mean, his stock is only going to continue to rise. And for Celtic, they'd be foolish just to cash in at the first bid that comes in, because, I think Romano's actually said in it there's actually Premiership clubs, plural, interested as well, not just one. So you could potentially end up with a bit of a bidding war going on there. Personally, I'd like to see him hang around. I think it would be in his best interest to hang around for another, at least another 6 months to a year, and see what the Champions League has in store for him. And I think Postecoglou can take him on to another level before he actually moves. And you might find if he was to stay for another season, he can then actually make a jump to a higher level in the Premiership, because we don't know who's actually looking at him yet at this point. But for me, if he was to hang around for another year, he'll definitely see the benefits of that. I mean, going back to the valuation though, Russell, I know obviously I'm saying it's going to be a bit of a different one, this year compared to previous summers, in the fact that Celtic, whilst they normally do sell, they don't necessarily have to sell, which is a very unusual position for them to be in, I would say, because they know they've got the Champions League money coming in right from day one, whereas usually they don't. When you're taking that into account, where would you put the sort of value on a guy like Josip Juranovic? Bear in mind, he's only been at the club for one season.
Well, I think that's an interesting point, Jonathan. What I also wanted to always remind our fellow fans, and I think it's about, there's a lot of people who are romantic when they support football, and separating your brain from your heart, Jonathan, when you make decisions or opinions, shall we say, on Celtic, it can be quite tricky, if I'm honest. Do you know that? It can be quite tricky. And I think when we're doing it on this sort of platform as well, then it can be harder as well, because you don't want to upset people, you don't want to offend people. But what we've always tried to do is just admit that we're not ITK, apart from David Logue. But we are very much...
ITK, he's ITL.
He's ITL. But we are trying to be honest, and we're trying to give an honest opinion on it. Now, if you want my honest opinion, then I think it's a wee bit negative. When Celtic last made the record turnover, Jonathan, the board failed to recognise John McGinn's worth an extra 300 grand. Okay? Celtic valuing our own players short is one aspect. They also seem to have an extremely low valuation of other people's players. Now, this is a generational thing. This went on for a long, long time. But when people think the £40 million is some sort of buffer, and that Celtic are suddenly going to go, oh well, we've got the Champions League money guaranteed. Brendan Rodgers, by this point, has been in two £100 million turnover seasons and can't get 2.8 million for John McGinn. If anyone thinks that Celtic's going to start commanding £30 million and upwards for Josip Juranovic, or sadly, if they think that Ange Postecoglou is going to be able to have final say, I'm afraid this isn't Ange's gift, Jonathan, right? I love Ange. I think Ange's opinion will be sought out. How would you rank him in terms of your, like in Championship Manager, for example? Is he an indispensable player? Is he an important first-team player? Is he squad rotation? Where do you rank him, Ange? And then they'll base their fee loosely on that. But it will never, ever, ever, Jonathan, with Celtic, be Ange Postecoglou gets to turn around and play Russian roulette on transfer fee bids of EPL sorts. Now, Jonathan, what I mean by that, sadly, is upwards of, to answer your question, upwards of 15 million. 15 million and up. Celtic will make that decision for Ange. I will be surprised if they haggle much if a £15 million bid came in, although I don't expect them on the flip side to sell them for less than that. But I think they have to be very, very accepting and mindful here that as much as we love Ange, and we would give this guy control of the club, he very much doesn't have that. Okay? Whether we want to dream, and we're all romantic because we've had an amazing season, don't be naive and think Postecoglou with that then, Jonathan, now gets to play, he gets to play Monopoly with Celtic's money. Celtic's money is very much Celtic's. Ange's job is Ange's. Okay? Ange's gift is what Celtic give him, not what Ange gets to tell Celtic. So what I think the next question that's important would be, if hypothetically Josip Juranovic transfer fee is met to the Celtic board, and that decision will not be in Ange's hands, in my opinion. I think it will be very much taken out of his hands. And if he goes, here's what people should be more concerning themselves with. It's not about Celtic selling Josip Juranovic and lacking ambition, right? We need to get used to it. In 2022, Josip Juranovic can smile about and, party on the pitch, Jonathan. All he wants at the Elite on Trophy Day and say he loves Celtic. In 2022, that's not the modern footballer, right? They've already got one eye on their next prize and boosting their own brand. They play for themselves these days. But the big thing we should be concerned ourselves with is, what would Celtic's next move be? Would we sell a Juranovic for, and my ballpark figure, I can see Conor McCann, it's brilliant to have him watching live. He's saying £15 million is way too short. He'd be spewing. I think we need to get real. I think at 27 years old, I think 15 million and upwards will be the ballpark figure that Celtic are looking for. And if you get the bidding war you were alluding to, brilliant. But what I will say, Jonathan, where we should be really, really taking note, if this were to happen, would Celtic then try and replace him with another 2.5 million? Or would we finally start seeing within a year's, because remember, this has been a year. So this very quick flipping of cash, Jonathan. This is buying at 2.8, sell at 15 or upwards. And hopefully it is upwards, by the way, guys. Hopefully it is upwards. I'm not here saying I want him to go for 15. I'm giving you my opinion on what the board's valuation will be. And I think it'll be 15 going forward. But will we then replace it, Jonathan, with an 8, 9 million, 10 million pound right back? We've still made profit on him, had a great season, a couple of trophies out of him, sold on for massive profit, bought in a replacement of a higher standing at the time we signed him than what Juranovic was when we signed him. That to me would be progress. If we try and repeat the trick, I don't think Celtic are learning from the mistakes that they've made over the last 20 years. What do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And, when you first bring that point up, the first thing I'm thinking is they'll definitely not spend lots of money on a replacement, upwards of 5
But that has
million.
to change. That has to change.
And that is because maybe that's just because we've just got so used to that over the years that Celtic, £5 million, and the board seem reluctant to even part with that. A lot of the time, anything 5 million upwards seems to be a real chore for the board to actually want to part with that money. And it's, as we've said before, it's not really an awful lot. It's buttons now in the modern day. So it's just a bit mad on that part. But yeah, I mean, if Juranovic was to say go for 15 to 20 million somewhere in around those figures, which could very well happen, then Celtic should be looking at a replacement, starting at least £5, £6, £7 million upwards to replace him. But whether or not they would, I'm not so sure. I'm not fully convinced the board have fully learned their lessons yet on that, and I think they would still try and go back to saying this is the strategy and this is brought us success in terms of bringing money in for a number of years. And they won't look at it from the team point of view. The board always tend to look at it from the balance sheet point of view in the first instance for me. And I think that's where it all boils down to for the board. There's two ways of looking at it when you're doing transfer business. And one is obviously to make sure that the club has financially prudent and in prudent health, which the board do extremely well. They're a bit nitpicky, but you can never really fault them for running the club recklessly. But then there's the other side where if you're wanting to really actually improve the footballing department and really try and make inroads, particularly in Europe, where Celtic have been so far behind in recent years, then they need to start actually putting the money back out onto the pitch. And you're right, if they were to go and spend, let's say they did sell Juranovic for, let's just say 15 million, they buy in a replacement for 8. You never know, that £8 million player could end up being like Juranovic or even better, and then you could potentially sell him for 20, 25 million, and you can even justify that because of the fact you've paid the higher fee to actually bring him in, to begin with. So it is one of those ones you've got to be willing to play the markets at times. Celtic, I feel, are just a little bit risk aversive, always have been. It might change this window, granted, but there is.
Well, let's dive in on that, because I think actually, Jonathan, you raised a couple of points, and whilst it's stirring in my memory, I'm going to interject a wee bit. Right, I often hear, Jonathan, I've seen it a million times in these comments since even the bus started, Ajax model. Ajax model. Do you know how the Ajax model developed, Jonathan? You know how it kept on growing? Is because they were reinvesting a higher percentage of the transfer fees they were actually recouping for players. Celtic have now got a body of work of transfers, Jonathan, sold in the 8-figure bracket. Now, I still think we get a wee bit giddy when we hear about 8 figures. I appreciate the argument's different with Juranovic, and a lot of people want more than the 15 million I've touted. That's fine. I operate in the, for me anyway, the real world, and I think Celtic's risk-averse strategy will see them start certainly sitting down and having extremely long phone calls if they get a smidgen of a £15 million offer for a player that costs 2.8 million, whether we like that fact or not. Then you've got the aspect of Jonathan. I like the comment that came in for Lanky. He's saying he's agreeing with the 15 million, right? And this isn't about, by the way, everyone agreeing with me. I'll bring up plenty of comments to disagree. But Lanky, the reason he said 15 million, JG's only actually played 1 season with us. If he'd been here for 2 or more years, it would be more money in it, in his opinion. I totally accept that. I actually agree with that. I agree that. And if you're a bidder, you're also looking at, well, how did he do in Europe? Celtic didn't have a great European campaign. So you're really basing it on an SPFL that's never been held in particularly high stock. In fairness, I would actually go as far, Jonathan, as to say I think the 15 million would be more based on the proven track record of Celtic selling players down south that Celtic have formed over the last decade. Now, about fees. 8 figures, Jonathan, we have now sold. Let's ring some off. Wanyama, Fraser Forster, Virgil van Dijk, Christopher Ayer, Edwards, Kieran Tierney, Dembele, right? How many of them, Jonathan, have really been adequately replaced with even as close as 30 to 40% of the transfer fee paid?
Well, none of the, well, apart from Dembele, you could argue with Edward. That's the only time that's really happened.
Edward was already in the building
before Dembele left, so there's 2 ways of looking at that argument.
He was in the building already. I think that's a lazy. That would be very. The board might agree with you on that, but I think that's bullshit. When we look at it deep down, Celtic have never, ever improved their reinvestment percentage, Jonathan, of fees that they've recouped. If we see a marked improvement in that, I completely subscribe to what you're saying. Celtic will then maybe get an 8 million guy who, by the way, should, not because he not just because he costs 8 million, because you would like to think the scouting would do a wonderful job, right? But if if they are going to pay 8 million, you would think, Jonathan, that there is a higher, greater chance of this person then being sold on for the 20s, 30s, millions. So you keep making, you speculate, you accumulate. Right now, Celtic's board, in my opinion, will feel like they've won a watch if within a year we turn around a 13 million pound profit on Josip Juranovic. I know people won't like it, but I think that will happen. Chris M comes in, and as I say, I will bring up people who disagree, and I don't mind that. He wants us to calm down. It's close season though, Chris. We do not always have loads of talking points. The news has just broke before we went on, so it's good fun to chat about. And it's great to get everyone's angle on it, and I'm really enjoying all the comments that are coming in. It's great that Jonathan can now see them as well whilst he's doing the live broadcast, because I created another login. Has Romano been right though every time, Jonathan? Of course he hasn't. Like we said at the top of the show, and Chris, if you missed the start of the show, that's fair enough. But at the very start of the show, we were talking, Jonathan, about his percentage, his strike rate, Romano's, is substantially higher than many of the other ITK accounts. That's why we're taking this one a bit more seriously, Chris. What we're then trying to work out is source. Who would have leaked this to Fabrizio Romano? He's not going to have made it up himself. He's got plenty sources out there that he can deal with other clubs. Celtic and who they, their fullbacks aren't at the top of his shopping list, to tweet about, right? But someone's went to him and told him that story. So who benefits most? Would it be someone at Celtic? I highly doubt that, because they don't want to jeopardise the relationship with Ange. Would it be Juranovic? Highly doubtful. He does strike me as being genuine enough to say when he's happy, he's happy. So who benefits? I think his agent. Knowing that there'll be a library of agent contacts that Romano has, that's who I think Jonathan would have leaked the story. Is it difficult now in the modern era, Jonathan, for us to pigeonhole why players want to leave? Before it was a case of, I don't mean Maurice Johnson, but they're instantly a Judas if they wanted to leave, Jonathan, right? Mm-hmm. Nowadays, though, when you consider all the factors involved, the monetary values, the shortening of careers all the time, when you look at some players' injuries that they've picked up and things and sustained, the riches, though, Jonathan, in the other leagues, is, it's stark, okay? When that is all there available to you, the reputation, of course, and the chance to play Champions League, not as in the case of Celtic for the first time in 5 years, but in the case of a lot of these other clubs, it could be regular. I think the options from afar, I think they're very more tempting now than what they were in yesteryear. Do we all just need to get with it and accept it? It's not all rainbows, Jonathan, It's not all going to be all hunky-dory. And just because a player's smiling, it doesn't mean they've not got one eye on their next move as well. They might be telling the truth, by the way, at the same time. I think there's so much influence now. That's why my hunch is that this agent may well be the source of the leak to Fabrizio Romano, that there's several clubs looking at Juranovic. And is it now a different ballgame from Martin O'Neill Claxon it? The era
34 minutes.
I know. But the eras where we had Henrik Larsson for 7 years, Jonathan, who was an elite footballer in Europe at that period of time. Do we need to just accept that ain't happening anymore?
It does seem as if we've got to that sort of stage, and I think there is a lot of acceptance amongst many Celtic fans and fans of other clubs in general that when it comes to Scottish football, there is a lot more riches to be had in playing in other leagues, and it's not even just the English Premiership. You can see in the English Championship now they're able to offer quite a lot of cash and wages in there, which isn't great.
Tell Chris as well. We're coming to that next, mate. Don't you worry. He's wanting us to keep it positive. Chris, we will be coming to Romano's next tweet. I did flag post at the start of the the start of the show. Don't you worry, we will be coming to it. Sorry, Jonathan.
We are going to be coming to that, and it'll be a bit more of an interesting and exciting one, hopefully. And as we say, this is all purely speculation anyway at this point. It's not a case of trying to be negative whatsoever about it. You never know. Juranovic could end up being sold, and Celtic could end up buying somebody just as good, if not better, if they decide to play the market correctly. So it might not necessarily be a bad thing, getting rid of Juranovic, for as much as it sounds bad, on first sort of paper, if you like. But, going back to the point about obviously Martin O'Neill's time at the club where players were more likely to hang around, I think a lot of that was also down to the fact Celtic were, able to compete not just in Europe, but, the wage difference wasn't quite as large as it is now. The financial difference between Scottish clubs and English clubs has just grown and grown and grown. It's unbelievable now how much even just playing for clubs like Bournemouth and Fulham can, offer down south compared to the likes of a Celtic up here. So of course that's going to turn players' heads, and they're going to be interested. It's a short career from their point of view, so they're obviously going to be chasing the next pound sign for themselves. So it's one of those ones where loyalty probably isn't as big a thing for me anymore in football as it was, maybe 20, 30 years ago. But I think a lot of the time, fans have kind of came to accept that is what will happen. There's no doubt in my mind, if the rumours are true and there's interest in Juranovic, then, whether it happens in this window or further down the line, it's something that Juranovic is going to be looking at, because he's got a short career. He had no affiliation with Celtic, you've got to remember, when he came in the door. So if he decided at some point he's going to be angling for the move, then he has that, opportunity towards doing that. So it's part of the nature of modern football, if you ask me. As I say, this one's came a little bit from left field. I didn't expect there to be this much interest in Juranovic at this point. You've got to bear in mind as well, Russell, Juranovic wasn't absolutely flawless last season. You made a good point earlier where you've obviously touched upon the fact the European run wasn't particularly anything special from Celtic last season. And, when Europe's not particularly special, the next thing you would think that, scouts would be looking at would be the Celtic Rangers games. And you've got to remember that one of them as well, Juranovic was actually at fault for Celtic conceding the first goal in the game they won at Ibrox towards the end of last season. So, again, it's not exactly put him in a brilliant light there either for potential scouts that are looking at him. Do I think he'll go? As I think probably what we're going to be looking at, and we may as well speculate. I actually think...
I like this, by the way. We can't speculate, Jonathan. We can do whatever the fuck we want. You know what I mean?
I think I actually don't think he will go, because I know people are wondering if we're being a wee bit negative. We're just really having a conversation about what Fabrizio Romano's put out tonight. If you're asking me honestly, I think he'll actually end up staying. You know that. I'm not sure he'll go in this window. I think we'll get at least another, 6 months to a year out of him. I think it'll benefit him playing longer under Postecoglou. It gets some exposure to the Champions League, and then if he's able to up his game even further, then the options for him next season, if indeed he does want to move, are only going to be greater, and the potential income, as we've touched upon as well, would be higher from Celtic. So it is a win-win. But I'm going to put that one back to you, Russell. Let's ask you the question. Josip Juranovic, will he be here come the end of this summer transfer window?
No. My interest. I think when Romano's getting involved in things like this, Jonathan, I don't believe that that's done loosely. Fabrizio Romano isn't trying to sell the Sun, or sell, whatever Diddy, the Daily Record sort of back pages. He's not trying to do that, mate. It's a tweet. It doesn't make any money off it. He tweets with substance. There is interest, and this is what you're seeing now. Is the first signalling for Juranovic's suitors. What this does is create more interest. If I'm honest, I watched, Mark Kenny and Regan. Me and Regan, I think, spoke about it first. And then, and to be fair, Mark and Regan took it, far further the point the next time they were on together, and it was brilliant on one of the Sunday Blethers. And basically what it was, Jonathan, Celtic's business model is largely based around, or what is it, the other side call it a player trading model. Whatever. But like a player trading model, Jonathan, if you want to call it that for argument's sake. Celtics, Jonathan, tends to involve selling an asset once a year. sometimes 2 assets like last summer. Okay, I think people who hang their hats on the fact that we're in the Champions League and that's going to make us more resistant to doing the selling thing, I think aren't paying attention. In my opinion, I don't mean that derogatory. I just don't see it, Jonathan. For me, if there's Celtic will constantly be batting their eyelids to clubs with riches, Jonathan, that we can only dream of if they're having a sniff around our players. Josip Juranovic, at the end of the day, Jonathan, costs 2.8 million and is probably on circa £15,000 a week. Should we speculate on that as well? Why not?
Yeah.
15 grand a week, 15 grand a week, 10, 15 grand a week. If someone's coming in, Jonathan, and offering 15 million upwards, and Celtic, the one thing they're very good at is the 10%, 20% sell-on fees and things as well. I mean, I think it's basic maths. What we've now got as well is a Fabrizio Romano tweet, Jonathan, the 20th of June, when there's over 2 months of the window left. So that is the cat very much amongst the pigeons. And let's play devil's advocate as well and say someone at Celtic has approved of Fabrizio Romano leaking that story. We were chatting only the other week on the Boyce'S bus about who would be an asset that you could see being sold. David Turnbull seemed to be the guy that was getting spoken about a lot in the comments. Again, it was Mark Kearney saying that if they could see someone, I don't think he wanted him to leave, but he could see it. It wouldn't surprise me, Jonathan, if Juranovic, if he is the apple of the eye of many suitors, what Romano calls it. I know people are looking down at the fact that he's not actually named one club. I would also say the fact many clubs are looking at it as quite intimidating, if I'm honest. I would say that would tell you that, again, if there's many clubs, he's not going to make yourself look like an arse. I would say that Juranovic is as disposable as anyone, Jonathan, at the end of the day. Celtic have to sell footballers, Jonathan, for the business model to be sustained. Yes, we've made a fortune in the Champions League, and I've advocated for months. I want us to reinvest more of that money, Jonathan, than what we've seen in the past, so we can regularly compete in the Champions League. I also think Celtic would caveat that with going, well, what if we have a honker of a season next year, finish second by 20 points, and we're all in the Europa League? Well, at least we'll have that extra 15, 20 million as well as the 40 million we made for the Champions League. So we've got money there for the rainy day. We're a very reactive club in general, not a proactive club. Celtic will react if 8-figure bids start coming in. I'm not going to say as low as 10 million. I think from 15 million upwards. I love the idea that Ange has more say than what people, what people think. I would love that, Jonathan, to be the truth. I find it very, very hard to believe Ange Postecoglou can hold that boat to account on 15 million and upward bids that come in for their assets that they pay the wages to. I don't think his stock's quite that high.
I don't think so. Because I mean, you're looking at it, and Rodgers could even get his way a lot of the time. And Brendan Rodgers, a proven manager, even more so than Postecoglou had been. Even before he came to Celtic, Brendan Rodgers had done a lot of good work, in the English Premiership, and still couldn't get his way all the time with the board, and some of the heckling, as we've already pointed out, particularly over John McGinn, ends up coming back and biting him. If Celtic were to end up deciding to sell Juranovic in this window, then they would really need to be considering how they're going to be bringing in, and if they think it's going to be acceptable to then expect Ange Postecoglou to go out and source, or one of his recruitment team to go out and source another player in the £2 to £3 million bracket to bring in. And I think that's where it would get interesting as to whether or not Celtic would go down the same route they always have. And I suspect it would, purely because I think the Celtic board would be shiting it more than looking at it as an opportunity to spend. If they spent 8 million, you could possibly, as we've said, sell them for 20 or 30 million. I think our board is more likely to take a negative mindset to that and think we could spend 8 million, this player could flop, and then we end up losing 8 million and don't really get our money back if we don't get the signing right. Which, of course, can happen. That's just the risk of transfers, regardless of how much money you spend. Nobody's a guarantee. Just because you spend £8 million on a player doesn't mean you're going to then go and sell them for 20 million. Football doesn't work like that. And I think from that point of view, the board would probably take the sort of cautious approach that they like to stick with. I'm not saying it's the right approach, but I think that's the approach they like to play, is when they're starting to project the future. Whereas we look at it and think, you get the right players in, you trust your manager to find you the right players, which Postecoglou has proven, by the way, in his first season. I mean, how many of his signings last season have turned out to be duds? Very few, if any. If you were to then go and give him, £8-9 million to spend on one player, you've got to back him to find the right one. And, as I say, Celtic are sitting on financial reserves anyway at the moment because they do have the Champions League money. They would have the Juranovic sale money coming in there as well, that they could afford that if the £8-9 million signing did turn out to flop, there's still plenty of cash reserves there. Celtic aren't going to be in a horrendous position where they're like, oh fuck, we need to actually now go and sell somebody for £20 million just to break even or something ridiculous like that. So for me, it would be an interesting one to see how the board would react if Juranovic was to go, and I think that would be something all of the fans would have a close eye on. I mean, the window this time is going to be exciting enough anyway, because we're going to find out with the board now knowing where they're playing, whether or not, and what Ange Postecoglou did last year off very much a shoestring budget in terms of individual signings. I'm not sure exactly who the most was he spent. It was about $4 million was Kyogo, maybe roughly. So he didn't spend a lot of money on one particular player in his team last year. So you've got to give him that opportunity. And it's a very good way of putting it. Ant Deck, yeah, very good, Paul, very good. Yeah, I've definitely got Ant McPartland's big forehead. I don't know about Russell, like Declan Donnelly. I'm not really sure. Maybe the height. But going back to going back to Juranovic, it's certainly one of those ones that's going to have the fans debating, and it's certainly, as you rightly say, put the cat in amongst the pigeons, so to speak, there as well.
Right, Jonathan, here's one more point on it, right? And I know we've exhausted it tonight, but I just think it's so interesting because it kind of came out of nowhere, sent a few shockwaves to the old Twitter, which I like. I mean, I don't mind people getting upset or animated about it. I think it's important because it shows that he's had a great season with us. Jonathan, I initially said in the WhatsApp group chat when someone had said, oh, why don't they wait to the winter window? I was like, no, mate. I'd rather sell them in January. Was it in the group chat? It was on Twitter, whatever one it was. I would rather sell now than in January. However, I hadn't taken into account the World Cup. The World Cup is a bit of a game changer, actually. And the more okay, you could be touting your client out at this point in time, and Celtic may well make some brilliant inroads with potential suitors, Jonathan, over the summer. The Celtic then could be savvy and go, but you know what? Let's see how he does at the World Cup before we commit to selling him to a Spurs, for example. Say it's Spurs, Arsenal, whatever it may be, right? Why not wait till there's a World Cup? Because I tell you what, one thing that is very, very, very true. If you have a good World Cup, Jonathan, your value can skyrocket even in the Scottish League. Chris is saying you wouldn't spend $8 million right back. There's a lot more important areas in the team. I mean, I suppose you could say that, mate, but if we're talking about we want 15 or more than 15, 20 to 30 million for a right back, remember, who's only played one season for us, then I would suggest that we do have a lot of value on that position. So we can't have it both ways. Celtic you've got to be able to start backing up, the fees that you want to command, and people take you more seriously as well. I do agree with them on this, though. It is harder to get a replacement in January. That's what I was saying initially. I think the January window is a busted flush, Jonathan.
There's also one of those problems with January as well, Russell, that if you do that, and let's just say the league title race is close, at that point, and, potentially, let's just say something did happen to Ralston, whether he got injured or something, and you then went and sold Juranovic in January, you are putting a huge amount of pressure on, the recruitment side of things, getting the right back in a notoriously tough window to sign players, which nobody wants to sell in January in the middle of their season. Whilst you might be able to capitalise a bit more and maybe get a bit more money for Juranovic in January if they was having a good World Cup, you could end up finding you have to sit on that money till the summer, purely because other clubs are just going to be turning around like, nah, our season's important, this right back, is important for our plans for the second half of the season. You'll have to wait for the summer if you're going to be trying to buy him. And you can find that even then going out to try and buy another right back is going to cost you more than, say, it would in the summer months. And, if you're looking at that, as I would expect, again, it to be another closely run title race domestically, Hopefully Celtic are still competing in Europe by the time January comes around as well. Then there is that risk that if you were to sell him in January, you're not going to have that option to then go out and instantly replace him, and then you're putting all your chips on Tony Ralston. Would you feel that would be too big a gamble for Celtic to go down that route?
No, of course it is, Jonathan. At the end of the day, Tony Ralston's performance has improved because we had real competition in that jersey. Yes, the belief of Ange's coaching was also a huge factor. And of course, Ralston, the player, deserves a hell of a lot of credit as well. But believe you me, I think Greg Taylor at times, whilst he may have in the last 2 months of the season sort of won over my lingering doubts, shall we say, I would still argue the case that, I think he probably could have been doing with the competition from day one last season. Real strong competition. I don't think Liam Scales, whether people like it or not, was ever going to actually afford him that. So we do need to have competition very much for Ralston. We don't necessarily need to say Ralston. That means he wouldn't start. I think the competition will be very healthy. Jonathan, it's 51 minutes already. Please, guys, hit the like button. Hit subscribe. If you want to become a member, then you can do so as well. David Ferguson hit the member button today. We do appreciate it. I mean, it's very, very small amounts, but it does allow the podcast to get a wee bit better and get new fancy microphones, Jonathan, So hopefully
and black cameras, so we don't have to see the black Labrador that's usually lying behind you.
That's it, mate. I've got a big fancier new camera. It ended up still costing me money, but the majority of the YouTube ad revenue went on it, Jonathan. I had to top it up a wee bit more. But going forward, hopefully then after that, it'll be self-sustaining. That's what we want. And we do want to keep making sure the product is as good. What I was going to say on that note, though, Jonathan, is if anyone who comes on the bus regularly, or if anyone wants to, even one of the viewers, if you're ever considering setting up your own podcast or anything like this, I have got a microphone and a webcam that I've been using the last 6 months up until tonight. I'm more than happy to give you for free. Okay, to get the ball rolling for you. So if anyone is interested in that, just let me know. And I'd happily do that, give a wee bit back. Because, simple as that, really. Jota, Jonathan, Romano at it again. Some people might think he's trying to curry favour from the Celtic support, because let's be honest, within 33 minutes, Jonathan, I noticed, of him tweeting the Juranovic story, it had nearly 5,000 likes. It had in the thousands of comments. The requote tweets was unbelievable. I wonder if he thought, well, I'm going to be back in your good books in a minute when I tell you this. Now, not only is Fabrizio Romano reporting that Jota is on his way, Celtic have apparently confirmed to Benfica their intention to trigger the buy option clause to sign Jota on a permanent deal in the next few days. Benfica are now prepared to receive €7.5 million for 70%. I couldn't quite work out that bit. Just waiting for the player to discuss the contract details with Celtic. But if you listen to what we've just been discussing for the last 40 minutes, Jonathan, my hunch would be Jota's agent and Celtic will already have a deal before Celtic trigger it with Benfica. Would you agree with that? I think so.
Yeah.
Another Portuguese journalist, Pedro Sepulveda, he only follows 8 people, Jonathan. He has 62,000 followers. He commented 62,000, I mean feet. He did the shaking hands emoji on Fabrizio's comment with a wee egg timer. So that kind of further adds weight that this deal is happening. I think it's huge. Just before I come to you, I just want to say a big shout out to Monty. I was waiting on him coming in the comments. Monty's dog, Jonathan, sadly passed away. Caesar, I know Monty's a big character in the comments. He's larger than life personality, to be honest with you. I've never even met him, and I just condolences, mate. I know we know from past experience, Jonathan. It can be the worst feeling in the world, mate. So no, I hope you're all right, and rest in peace, Caesar. Indeed, horrible thing, and I'm thinking of you, buddy. All right, nice one. But Jonathan, we do need to talk about football in the pod, so we will get back to that. If these journalists are verifying it, I think we need a wee bit of clarity on what the 70% means. What do you mean? Are we buying 70% of his rights? Is this like a Carlos Tevez situation or something? Or are we... It's not going to be a 70% sell on that I've seen in the comments. I can't see that. Where do we go from here on that one? I don't really understand that. I would have liked more clarity and more context. However, let's just look at the positives. There's two journalists there. Romano's obviously the celebrity journalist, or agent, or wannabe agent, whatever. Or you've got a bona fide Portuguese journalist, 62,000 followers, Jonathan, kind of almost rubber stamping it on in terms of Twitter. That's very encouraging. Has the timescales now, Jonathan, made it clear Celtic couldn't delay announcing this one anymore? My hunch is he knew he was signing. I think it was done before the end of the season. I think Cameron Carter-Vickers knew he was signing as well. I think the kit releases have been a huge part in it. I fully expect Celtic to release their next kit, whether it be the home or the away one, in the next few days. It'll probably coincide with the first day of pre-season training, Jonathan. Jota will be a permanent signing for Celtic. If people are getting their knickers in the twist about Josip Juranovic loving it at Celtic and we can't sell him for 15 million, Jonathan, well, this guy comes in at 7.5 million euros, 6.8 million pounds. And to me, in a year's time, we may well be having very, very, very similar conversations because Jota is a class above. Let's just get that absolutely crystal clear. The beauty of Angie's front line next year is how do you fit them all in? If Jota's there permanent, that is a statement o'clock signing, Jonathan.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge, and it's been one I think the fans have been probably looking at very closely since the season finished as to when, really, not if this season, this signing was, announced. And, Jota's been dropping hints wearing a Celtic top. It's been a bit like Jota Watch, really trying to find out exactly where he is and what he's been up to. But there always seems to be one continuing theme in a lot of it. And that's the fact that the Jota seems to be pictured, in Celtic tops, so there seems to be some sort of Celtic connection throughout the summer. And there's no two ways about it. He's going to become a Celtic player, I would imagine, at some point this week. There we go. Benfica with a 30% sell-on fee is the point. So thanks for that, Chris.
Strange way of wording it by Fabrizio, but if that is the case, Chris, I really appreciate your insight on that, buddy, because I was struggling to work out what that meant. It said 7.5 million euros for 70%.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't make head nor tails for either. I was going to say we need to Phil McGinley because I'm sure he would have been able to decipher that. But Chris is beating him to the punch. Phil the stat man hasn't been able to rumble this or hasn't told us quite yet. But yes, that would make sense, Chris. So happy to take your point on that part. But as I say, going back to Jota, it's very exciting as a Celtic supporter. It's the one we've probably been waiting for, him and Carter-Vickers, since the season ended. It'd be nice to get that one rubber stamped this week. As you say, the pre-season training is about to begin and you want Jota to be a part of that from day one, which I have no doubt, he will be. And when you look at him last season, and even when we're talking, about how Juranovic is, a player that perhaps didn't quite perform and to the same levels perhaps in Europe. What you can say about Jota is Jota had some outstanding games for Celtic in Europe, and it seemed like in a lot of the big games Jota seemed to step it up a level. You only have to look at that Ferencváros game for that pass for the goal from Kyogo at home, and you just know Jota's going to have a big say in the Champions League. He's one of those players that is just tailor-made for the Champions League. Those nights under the lights, I would go as far as to say we will get a moment from Jota in the Champions League in one of those games where he's going to grab the game by the scruff of the neck and do something special. And it's the kind of signing that excites the fans. It'd be great to get it done, obviously, with Fabrizio Romano teasing out about it. Then you would think this one looks, again, like it's pretty much done. So, we're looking at it from a very positive point of view on that side of things. And when you're looking at it with the green tinted spectacles on, you've got to say this is looking like a very promising move from Celtic, and hopefully it's a sign of things to come, because it's not just Jota that Celtic are obviously looking at just now, but you've also got the left back Barnaby, which looks as if it's another one that's very close to being done. I've no doubts there's going to be a few others coming in the next couple of weeks, and I think that's been the most refreshing thing about this for me, Russell. Can you really remember the last we went into a summer window and we're actually quite confident in this board in terms of getting deals done early? Because I think Celtic could actually have all their business done before the SPL season starts in terms of transfers in, unless somebody, was to go out unexpectedly because a bid comes in for them.
I think that's a great point, Jonathan. I think in an ideal world, whilst you don't want, you wouldn't accept Celtic switching off just because they've got all the players whilst they're mid-window, you would be thinking then down the route of, well, why not? If you get all the targets over the line, firstly, that'll be very refreshing. And then you could give the scope to go in, well, why not keep a wee eye on this till mid-August, late August, and see if there's another one of those loan to buys that might crop up. A player realises he's not going to be in first team recognition from a really bigger club, and the only way we can get him is on loan. But with one of those option to buys again, I wouldn't mind that. But yes, in terms of actual investment in real signings, that'll be permanent fixtures at the club. Absolutely, I see no reason for Celtic not now to do what they've done in January, to do what they've done already with Cameron Carter-Vickers. Don't make that a virtue signalling exercise, Jonathan. Make it the reality of how Celtic do business going forward. That is what we want. And I just want to say as well, the Jota one is really positive. How much credit do we give the board for it? I think loads. I think whoever spotted Jonathan that there was a guy of his ability available last summer, and whoever it was that negotiated with Benfica, that no matter how well this guy excels or how rank rotten he is, 6.8 million, I think it is, or something it works out as in pounds. That will be the fee. Well, Jonathan, I bet at Benfica they're a wee bit gutted right now that they agreed to that deal. That then means you have to give praise to the other person on the side of the divide of the deal. And that, in this case, is Mr. Celtic, whoever that may be. No, I don't mean the wee fella. I think we have now managed, Jonathan, to sign a player for a valuation that in 2022 is the equivalent of David Fernandez money. Okay? He was £1 million in 2003. I think Jota at 6.5 million in 2022. Yeah, I think that's that sort of money. The difference being Jota is 23, and for me, a player capable to go on to the next level, Jonathan. He is capable to enhance Celtic's Champions League campaign. He's that good, in my opinion. Now, what then comes with that? There is a pressure on the board, Jonathan, though, still. And the reason is because the cynical side, even of me, and by the way, of many angles of our support base will be, well, those two deals were already kind of signed up last summer. All you had to do was cross the I's and dot the T's on that and convince two guys that had the two best seasons of their career to stay at that club. Hardly reinventing the wheel, is it? So, now, don't think that can be your getting away with it moment. Oh, we got those two done. No. Secondly, on top of that, Jonathan, it's very interesting you talk about players coming in early. Sincerely, we cannot try and replicate doing two Jota and Cameron Carter-Vickers deals on the last day of the season and then trying to repeat this trick next summer that they stay permanently if these guys, hypothetically, if they came in. No. Now, Jota and CCV came in the last day of the season, Jonathan, in what was a crazy summer. They have excelled. They have nailed it, right? But with that came a bit of fortune, a bit of luck. We now know, as you were talking about earlier on, what our pathway is this season because we're in the Champions League. There are no playoffs. The money is there. It's there being counted as we speak. The season tickets sold out again. So we want instant action, Jonathan. And if you are getting a loan to buy sort of player again, like CCV and Jota, that being the sprinkling of magic dust on deadline day, just to keep us fickle fans happy. But I totally agree with you. There's a huge importance that we get the early phases of the transfer window achieved with the vast majority of the targets that Ange has identified.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I would 100% agree. It's so important for Celtic to kind of capitalise, and as you say, you go back to the January window, and it was pivotal. We talk about how well we did, on the park, but you've got to give a lot of credit to what happened off the field in January, because without the prompt actions of everyone involved of getting those signings in, the season may well have panned out slightly differently, because these are all fine margins that all led to the success that was last season. And, I'd be foolish of the board not to try and capitalise on that again this window and make sure that Celtic are doing their business early. The season starts again not that long, actually. It's only a month. It feels like it's been away forever, but it's not that far. It'll come around fairly quickly, 5 weeks, I think, roughly, until the next competitive game that we will play. And ideally, you're probably wanting another couple in, and that's before you even consider the thought of possibly, as we've discussed, having to source another right back if Juranovic did indeed decide to go and there was a suitable bid that came in there. So, from a Celtic point of view, you've got to be looking at it and thinking, let's hit the irons hot. There's plenty of players that are available there. The news stories seem to be suggesting that Celtic are getting closer, particularly to Barnaby, as I mentioned. As the left back, I fully expect Jota's deal to be completed this week. And if they can just get a run of momentum, Russell, just imagine if, you think over the next 5 weeks, let's say they're going to be bringing in, they don't need to bring in tons, but if they're bringing 3 or 4 players over the next 4 or 5 weeks, then that would be a big statement of intent going into the next season, particularly, when you're looking, and not that we really look too closely at our rivals, but, there's not really been much transfer activity there as of yet. But, you can really start laying down a lot of pressure before the season's even kicked off that, we mean business again. And, we're not satisfied with where we were last season as a club. We want to get even better this time around and push on even further. So I think, getting business done early is so important in terms of that. And I actually think Celtic, for me, it's nothing in the know about this. This is more of an in the low comment. But I think Celtic will have all of their transfer business done before the SPL season kicks off. That's my prediction for the window.
I like it, Jonathan. It's not quite a knockout blow, but it is a prediction for the window, and we'll take that. Jerry Coyle is just so kindly donated at tenner, mate. That's so generous, so nice. Thank you, Jerry, mate. And I'm glad. I'll take that as an endorsement. You're enjoying the show, or it's a tenner to shut us up, Jonathan. One way or the other.
I tell you to hurry this up and wrap up.
Thank you,
Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry. No, we really appreciate it, mate. As always, it's really, really kind. The kindness of everyone that's been on the bus has been just overwhelming at times, to be completely frank with you. So I really, really, really do appreciate it. Jonathan, before we go, we will cast our eyes over to our rivals. Now, I'll tell you why. A lot of the time you will get narratives, and I know Monty, for example, Mr. Charisma himself, he will say at times, no, it's all about what we do. Well, sadly, the club that we support aren't run by people who share that narrative, Jonathan. And if Celtic were only focused on Celtic, I think Celtic would have been left Rangers in the dust and would have won 10 in a row. Okay? I think a lot of Celtic's decision-making gets made based on what the rivals do. All right?
100%. I think it's been pretty clear if you've been following it closely over the last 10 years. There's no doubt about it. Celtic have certainly always got one eye over the city.
So, I think that we are looking, Jonathan, at a situation where Rangers, what they do this window could influence still what we do. I hope I am wrong on that. I hope I am wrong. But there is a chance, Jonathan, that when you're seeing Rangers recontract a 37-year-old Stephen Davis, a 40-year-old Alan McGregor, and a 30-year-old Connor Goldson for 4 years, that they may well become their statement signings of the window, right? Now that we can all go, do you know what? That's a good sign for us. Maybe their skin or something like that, right? We could all say that. But what worries me, Jonathan, would be that complacency would then creep back in with the board. And before you know it, actually has a knock-on effect that we end up looking at it and going, well, and we don't need £10 million players because they're just re-signing guys in their 30s that were already there, as their statement said.
Last season.
Now, I seriously hope I'm wrong. Moritt is already in. We should never look across to that filth. I agree with the sentiment, Jonathan, that we shouldn't be basing our decisions on what Rangers do. I agree with Monty. The fact of the matter is that there's enough evidence there now to tell us we do. Whether we like that or not is an irrelevant fact. We're just talking about how it goes. All right? So, with that in mind, and I mean, they've not even been linked with a player. All they've been doing is being linked with selling players. Does that maybe go against your argument, Jonathan, that this will be such an assured window that Celtic will so quickly have everything done?
Well, there is always the possibility the board could look across at the rivals. And, I think when it comes to Rangers, they're probably going to be doing their business later on in the window, because they obviously are not in the same position as Celtic in terms of knowing where they're going to be playing from a European perspective yet this season. They have to negotiate Champions League qualifiers, which we have know all too well from experience are very difficult ties to always get through. Particularly,
I was talking about it now.
Yeah. I mean, we'd probably still be getting knocked out now. Let's be honest, we were playing qualifiers. I wouldn't be overly confident in Celtic getting through them, truth be told, because generally speaking, the board would wait before doing any business until such time as they knew where they were playing. And it may well be that Rangers are taking a similar course of action, similar to what Phil McGinley is saying in the comments that's been brought up there. So Rangers could well have a late surge. Do I expect that to influence Celtic, and then to wait, find out where Rangers are going to be before they decide, Rangers have got in the Champions League, they're now spending money, we need to spend money. Dangerous game to play, because the Rangers' last Champions League qualifier won't be until mid-August, probably, if they were to get that far into the qualifiers and indeed qualify for the Champions League. And Celtic should not be basing any of their decisions on what our rivals are up to here.
I agree.
We've got a Champions League group stage to contend with, not just Rangers domestically, as well as everybody else in the league next season. So you've got to be looking at it and thinking, it's not often we actually get a crack at the group stages in the Champions League. It's been, a good few years since the last time we've been playing in the Champions League group stages. We need to be going all out, getting our business done, and then, we'll deal with Rangers as and when, it means we're fully equipped. So if Rangers do, worst case scenario from the Celtic board point of view, get the additional money and make the Champions League alongside us, and then do, spend a bit of that and bring in maybe 2 or 3, top quality players. Celtic already, done their business early. They're already prepared for Rangers being that bit stronger. Alternatively, if Rangers didn't qualify for the Champions League, then it just means they probably won't be in a position to sign as many good players. And it means Celtic already have a bigger advantage before they've even played against their city rivals. So for me, it's an absolute no-brainer for the board to make sure their business is done swiftly in this window, and there should absolutely be no fanning about waiting to find out what's going on across the city, because whatever happens across the city is really none of our business in a lot of ways, and it's certainly not something we can control. So we can only take care of our own business, and that involves getting our players in as quickly as possible. So Postecoglou is fully prepared, not just for the domestic season, but also for the Champions League games as well.
Jonathan, you've nailed it, mate. On that note, we will round up tonight's show. That was spot on, that synopsis. This isn't about me or you, Jonathan, thinking that Celtic should base their decisions on what Rangers are doing. It's just, we're looking at it.
Well, a lot of people will ask that question, though, Russell, I think, and it's a very valid point to bring up, because, as fans, we are obviously more likely to look across at what our rivals are doing. As part and parcel of football happens with every team of supporters that you look at. So, it's perfectly natural that, fans will be looking at what Rangers are doing and thinking they're not up to much. And then there is always that, possibility of complacency there, but there's no reason for Celtic to be getting involved in that. Absolutely rubbish if they were to be getting involved in that nonsense. Again, as Roy Keane would say, if they were to entertain anything that's going on, at Ibrox, as if that's a strategy we should be following or modelling ourselves after. So I'm fairly confident. As I said, my bold prediction, not quite a knockout of the week. You kind of have them in the close season, but my prediction of the week, if you like, is that Celtic will have all their permanent business done by the time the league season kicks off at the end of July.
It's big statements from Jonathan. It's what we do on the Boyce'S bus. It's been a great Monday Club. Thank you so much to Jonathan. And more importantly, thanks to all you in the views. It's great. David Ferguson's become a new member of the channel. And a huge thank you to Jerry Coyle for his kind donation. And I'd like to reiterate as well, huge condolences to Monty on his dog passing away. And Danielle, who's always in the comments as well, obviously on the mend, which is fantastic as well. We love all of this stuff on the Boyce'S bus. It's not just all about talking shite about Celtic, which I tend to care a wee bit about our viewership as well, Jonathan. We are going to have another busy week. Nostalgia will be back this week. Thursday sees the second leg, the away leg. I don't know why we're doing it on a Thursday. I think they've picked a poor date, Jonathan. They're obviously trying to keep themselves sober this time.
They're trying to keep themselves sober. It'll be interesting to see how the quiz shapes up after Saturday. I'll be watching that one. Very interested.
I was meant to do a draw for the players. I can't. Who's actually in the team? I've not even announced it yet. So Phil and Mark did the other one. I'll need to pick two more who want to come on for the away leg, but I'll get them. But that'll be great fun. There's the Double Doon show. David Logue's dad, Jonathan, keeping it in the family. He's coming on this week, which will probably be the final Double Doon show, Jonathan. That'll be a known Boyce'S bus contributor on it, because the bus has now reached a certain amount of folk on it that I can't keep adding more to the pot, Jonathan. It's crazy, and everyone's so enthusiastic. We need to try and keep them busy, so there might be some changes there. If you've not hit the like button and you've not hit the subscribe button, there's been well over 100 watching tonight live. I ask you why. Do it, because it does really help us. If you do want to become a member like David Ferguson did tonight, we'd be really grateful for that. But again, it's completely optional. The content will always be free. We will have more exciting news down the line as well, Jonathan. Could there be a live show in the pipeline?
Ooh, you're teasing. You're back to teasing again.
I'll leave you with Chris Sutton. Bye.
Some of his comments about me deliberately trying to cause controversy. Well, I work in the media now, and you've got someone sitting there next to you who's an embarrassment to the media profession. He's an apologist. He's a charlatan.